start. Hello everyone, and if you're from Uzbekistan, then of course salam, and welcome to Understandable English. This is part of a travel series that I have been doing recently, where I talk in a very relaxed and slow and understandable way about different trips and travels that I have done, so that you can learn about the world while also practicing and learning English. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my trip to Uzbekistan. This was the first leg, or the first part, of my Central Asian trip that I did last year. Although I spent almost 3 months in this part of the world, I even convinced my parents to join me on this leg of the trip. So they were in Uzbekistan for 2 weeks with me. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of my trip, if I had to sum up my experience, or tell about my experience in a few words, I would say that it was full of swarms of taxi drivers and very kind and warm-hearted people. Also, the food was delicious. But like most tourists, I started in the capital city of Uzbekistan, which is Tashkent. I had some errands to run, or some little things I needed to do for myself. I needed to renew or remake a new passport because I was running out of space. So I had an adventure going to the US Embassy to do that. But other than that, I still had time to do some tourist things in the capital as well. Now, Tashkent is not really the center of tourism for Uzbekistan because most of the old and historical parts were destroyed during an earthquake. So nowadays, it's a little bit more modern and new. But there are still some things that remain and some things that you can see. I also really liked the vibe of this city. You could feel some sort of youthful energy coming from the young people. They were driven to make things better and to build a wonderful life for themselves. It was tangible. You could feel it in the air. One of the downsides of this, of course, is the lack of authenticity for tourists. A lot of the things that you can do in Tashkent are made specifically for tourists. So, of course, only tourists go there. This was much different when I went to Ferghana Valley. My parents and I decided to rent a car, and we drove up over the mountain pass towards the valley. This valley doesn't see as many tourists. For this reason, you don't feel as much like a tourist, but you get to see and experience the way that many Uzbek people live. Now, coming from the United States, just being on the road was a crazy experience. I would say that most people in the US follow the rules of the road. That means they don't really speed and they do things mostly safely. But in Uzbekistan, it was crazy. Some of these cars were loaded up. That means they have lots and lots of things on top of them, and they were driving in ways that seemed to me impossibly unsafe. They were going way too fast, faster than they should be, especially for the quality of the roads. So this was very much a new experience for me. Sometimes we even had to stop and wait, not for a traffic jam of cars, but for a traffic jam of cows or sheep, when there was a huge herd or a group of sheep or cows that were crossing the street. What I really liked about my road trip or my driving trip in Uzbekistan was that along the road there were people and families who were selling different foods and drinks and fruits. They would just sit there on the side and wait for people to stop. And it was very interesting to have this sort of unofficial shop. In the United States, you mostly have to stop at an official store or a gas station in order to buy something. But here, you can just stop on the side of the street and someone will probably have what you are looking for. I also liked the different cafes along the street. You could pull over, that is, stop your car on the side of the street. And there was this cafe with fresh vegetables and salads, these cooked and barbecued meats. You were sitting on this tapchan, which is like a bed and a seat combined into one, and that is where you eat your food. It was a very relaxed vibe, very cheap, and very delicious. So everything a tourist could ever want. It is places like this where I realized how little tea most Americans drink. I almost never drink tea, but if you are in Central Asia, well, there's tea everywhere. For breakfast, lunch, dinner, whenever you want to drink something, it's probably tea. And most people don't drink tea without some sort of bread with it too. In the Ferghana Valley, we made a few stops. The first one was in Rishtan, a small city. This they call the ceramic capital of Uzbekistan. Ceramics are like clay. There are many multi-generational masters who have lived with their family from generation to generation and passed down or given their skills to their children. For this reason, they are very, very skilled and make wonderful pottery and ceramics. It was interesting to see how they did things traditionally with these natural dyes or colors, and also how they use modern colors and dyes to do things in a more modern way. We also stopped in a small city called Marjalan, and we learned about the way that silk and these different fabrics are created. We saw the process from the trees, to the worms, to the cocoons, to the strings, to the machines, and the dyes and colors. It was a long and lengthy process, but very interesting to see. There you could also learn a little bit about the Persian influences, especially with their rugs and carpets, how they weave or make these things. We also stopped at a local market near Marjalan, which was a wonderful experience. As I said, in Ferghana Valley there isn't a lot of tourist activity, so not as many people come. For this reason, they welcomed us very, very warmly, very kindly. They didn't try to sell us anything we didn't want. They simply wanted to talk and learn about us, just the same as we wanted to talk and learn about them. The city of Ferghana itself was a bit more quiet and clean. It was a more modern city, so it didn't have as much historical significance as some of the other places. But I do remember this huge flag flying in the main park there. And I had some very delicious lagman in a cafe, that is a type of Central Asian or Uzbek food. In general, the Ferghana Valley is an interesting place culturally. There is a big mixture of people from different countries who have lived in this valley for a long time. So nowadays, the borders, or the edges of the countries, are drawn, but there are still people living on both sides of the borders. So it's an interesting mix of people. The last place we stopped in the Ferghana Valley was called Chust. There, it was a small city, but we stopped specifically to learn about the blacksmiths. A blacksmith is someone who makes things out of metal. In Chust, there are famous knives and different sort of metal weapons and things to use. I really needed a knife for my camping or my backpacking. My old knife was not very good. So it was interesting to see the process of how my new knife was made. I could even talk to the blacksmith who made it. One of the things I remember the most from my time in the Ferghana Valley was the kindness of strangers. Even if you just asked for directions or where to go, people would stop and walk and show you, even if it was a 15-minute or 20-minute walk away. They were happy to help someone who needed help. It wasn't just them pointing and saying, okay, go away. Now they were happy to stop, drop everything they were doing, and help the best that they could. But after a few days in the Ferghana Valley, we got in the car, drove up and over the mountain pass, through the tunnel, and back towards Tashkent. We continued onwards to Samarkand, Bukhara, and Khiva, but I'll tell you more about those in a second piece. I think it's easier to digest and understand these travel videos if they are a little bit shorter. So, thank you for listening and learning today. I hope you learned something new. If you know anyone from Uzbekistan, then go ahead and share this video with them. so that they can learn about a foreigner's perspective in their country. If you learned something new, feel free to press like and subscribe. I've been posting a lot of different travel videos recently, so if you're interested, you can learn more about the world while learning English. But for now, have a wonderful rest of your day. Toodles!